There's a good deal of glasnost about in Izmailovsky Park, a huge stretch of forest and greenery in the east of Moscow, where every Sunday thousands of Muscovites go to stroll past hundreds of artists and craftsmen offering their wares for sale, allowed to do so under the comparatively recent law allowing individual labour activity, or to put it crudely, private enterprise. That's just one of the elements of the sweeping reforms of Perestroika that Mikhail Gorbachev is trying to achieve in a Soviet Union where not everything is as relaxed as a Sunday afternoon in the park. The work on show may not be terribly good, but it's new and varied. There's no inhibition about displaying romanticised heads of Christ or imitation icons, nor rather sexy nudes with the girls who are clearly the models sitting watching the crowds go by. And the crowds are well dressed enough, relaxed enough, cheerful enough to give little hint that the Soviet Union is struggling to get out of a near economic crisis and tackling major reform programs with an overt lack of unanimity. Professor Oleg Bogomolov, one of the architects of Perestroika and one of its strongest advocates, acknowledges that the difficulties are turning out to be very considerable.
They are more serious than we have anticipated 2 or 3 years ago. We had at that time some illusions about our future, but now we have realized that Perestroika requires more efforts and more time.
But Professor Nikolai Shmelyov, the economist whose eagerly awaited articles have raised the spectre of unemployment as a consequence of economic reform, and who advocates early and drastic revision of the Soviet Union's bizarre price system, where a pair of tights can cost as much as 3 kilos of meat, believes that something has to be done urgently to cope with the continuing consumer problems.
The most important thing for us now is some considerable progress in our agricultural production. And the second thing, maybe we need to increase our imports of consumer goods.
Not that that should be taken to mean that the aim is to give the Soviet citizen anything approaching the West's range of choice, even though the Soviet consumer might welcome it. In the Riga market yesterday, crowds were jostling to get at the stalls of Soviet-made jeans at £100 a pair, or imported shoes of better style and quality than anything Soviet factories turn out. In the collective farm market, I queued for a taste of the first strawberries. The lady in front of me reckoned she was getting short weight, and at £5 a pound, you can hardly blame her for getting ate up. She won, by the way. Her squelchy paper bag was grudgingly topped up. Admittedly, prices in the market are higher than in the shops, but so is the quality. Even in the state shops, though, prices are rising and goods are in intermittent short supply, notably at the moment sugar, for reasons to be explained shortly. Quality is poor. The other day I watched a Soviet friend throw away half a lettuce as she prepared dinner. She, like many, perhaps most Soviet housewives, is desperately worried about the promised price reforms, which they believe will merely mean higher prices and a lower standard of living. The idea is to remove the whopping subsidies on staple foods over the next 2 or 3 years and make up the deficit by some form of income supplement. Even though promises have been made, many people don't believe them. They've conned us before and they'll con us again, they say. Vladimir Nadyin, who's the letters editor of Izvestia, sees the evidence daily among the thousands of letters his paper now receives that reform of the price system is a bone of contention.
Educated people, they think it is very vital, it is necessary to do so, as Shmelyov advises. But I also think that we have no other way than to change all the system. But our simple people, the majority of our readers, I return to this point, they think that we can find some other ways of solving problems.
In the light of that kind of anxiety shown in the letters to Izvestia, it's hardly surprising that when they're asked to back the sweeping economic, political and social reforms the party conference at the end of June will be discussing, people are asking for cast-iron guarantees. Nikolai Shmelyov believes they're entitled to them.
For easing this very painful process of price reforming, we need some obvious improvement on our consumer market. It will be the best guarantee for the first step, the improvement in our food supply and a little improvement in our supply of consumer goods.
One new idea which hasn't turned out to be outstandingly effective is the stringent drive against alcoholism. Vodka sales were restricted, drinking hours limited, and prices doubled, and there aren't as many spectacular drunks on the streets. But Vladimir Nadyin, who's written a number of articles about the campaign for Izvestia, believes, with millions of other Soviet citizens, that it's gone wrong.
On the first period of this, our struggle against alcoholism, we had very good results. Good results because there were less drunk people on our streets and less vodka sold in our stores. So the first results were good. But after that came the second stage of this struggle, and disappeared many goods that we need. The most difficult for our people was the disappearance of sugar. You know, sugar is the most common and convenient product to make homemade vodka.
And in restricting the sales of official vodka, the state has diverted revenues of millions of rubles into the pockets of the moonshiners. And moonshine, summer gone, is sometimes deadly poisonous.
Sometimes it is very dangerous, but sometimes now people became clever, and homemade vodka, Somagon, is even better than industrial vodka.
Sounds to me as if you might have tried it once or twice.
Yes, I tried it. I know what I'm speaking about.
Vladimir Nadyin's office in Izvestia overlooks Pushkin Square. A couple of evenings ago, when I was coming out of the metro there, I came across something familiar enough in London, but still a rarity in Moscow, a demo. About 1,000 members of an informal group, the Ecology Party, had gathered under the watchful but not too intrusive eye of the police to protest about the town planning activities of the Moscow City Council, whom they accuse of using park and forest to build houses, or, even worse, to extend the Moscow Zoo. I ran into Boris Kagalitsky, once imprisoned for his allegedly dissident activities, but now an acknowledged leader of the radical left of Perestroika. He told me what was going on.
They are just now discussing a resolution criticizing the politics of the Moscow City Soviet, which is destroying the parks in the city and which is not listening to the voice of the people. Almost all unofficial events were always banned, but now the ecological movement almost killed those temporary rules because they gather a lot of people every 2 weeks and they are able to help those rallies without punishment, which means that they introduce new rules de facto. De facto, they are making precedent for the people.
The informal groups are trying to act like minor political parties and pressure groups anywhere else, recruiting members, publishing manifestos, mobilizing opinion, which makes them a dangerous rival to the official Young Communist League, the Komsomol. The Perestroika programs the party conference will be discussing next month make more than a nod towards pluralism within socialism. But Oleg Bogomolov, in common with other senior party figures, rejects the idea that that means anything like a multi-party system.
We think that it is not necessary to create another party. We can express different interests within the party, within one party. It requires certainly some kind of discussions within the party and alternative suggestions how to solve the acute problems in our social life.
Khrushchev tried to be a reforming general secretary in the early 60s and got fired for his pains. I asked a university lecturer, Lyudmila Kostina, why she believed that Gorbachev's reforms stood a better chance.
When Khrushchev tried to introduce reforms, it concerned only economy. And now it concerns economy, democratization of all spheres, social sort of reforms are also being introduced, reforms in education. So it is a comprehensive reform, and culture too. I think that this reform must be irreversible. At least we hope so.
Yes, yes. And I think that the most important thing now is that people are changing. The mentality, the perception of reality is changing.